Today I'm talking about um, hierarchy uh, from the social perspective. So, hierarchy is one of the four uh, principles, ideals that would govern heaven. Um, and uh, I did a post about the personal version of what that means. And now we're talking about social hierarchy, um, which sounds, uh, yeah, the word hierarchy has this edge to it, which I think I kind of like leaning into, but um, uh, I mean hierarchy in the most egalitarian possible sense, and I guess in particular what I have in mind, to cut to the chase about the social version, is that um, it's possible in principle to uh, be aligned with people who find um, deep satisfaction and fulfillment that they wouldn't otherwise find. That they sort of crave, sort of unconsciously desire as the desiring machine that they are, that their unconscious is. And there's some group of people out there, or person out there, who then, when you interlock with them, the same thing happens for you. And that there's this kind of unconscious synergy involved in forming a configuration with another person or another group of people. And so essentially hierarchy involves a kind of conscious effort to avoid situations that aren't like that, and to tend carefully to situations that you find yourself in that are like that. And that's not nearly as simple as it sounds, and especially the first one. It's not, I think it's almost no one's, it's very few people's first impulse to uh, keep in mind how many people are out there, and that a dimension in life can be almost leaving space open for new interactions with new people. And then similarly, it's possible to kind of ruin configurations that had some kind of potential of that kind, but due to whatever it is, poor communication, poor integrity, that kind of closing up, but so I guess to sort of contrast that with also is, and that this is sort of a divine version of hierarchy. So you can contrast that with like profane versions of hierarchy, which are not, they're not like pure evil exactly, but they're profane. They're fallen in some way. They presuppose the first principle of sovereignty to sort of not be in effect. And roughly speaking, the three that I can think of are like from order of strongest or sort of most ordered to least ordered is a social hierarchy that is uh, really explicit and really intently enforced. Would be something like the military, where like if you disobey the chain of command, like your life is ruined. You're thrown in the brig or whatever. And then there is kind of corporate hierarchy, work hierarchy, where sort of an understanding that you are engaging in some kind of alienated activity, that you're not fulfilling your potential in exactly the way that you're called to. To some degree or another, you're holding that back and kind of faking it. And performing something that is assigned to you for the sake of remuneration, and that's uh, uh, still pretty structured, but it's it's still very explicit, uh, but it's there's implicit qualities to it as well, and it's sort of you can be finding fulfillment to some degree in that, whatever. Um, then there are entirely informal hierarchies, and there's multiple kinds, but maybe they're all essentially the same. Of, say, families, groups of friends, maybe like even sort of criminal operations or like gangs or whatever, where like the everything is actually super implicit, and but someone with power or charisma is kind of at the top, and people want to be around that person, uh, and there are kind of all these implicit codes. There's sort of trust and loyalty, and signs of that, and that is with that one, because it's so implicit. In some ways, that's the richest one, where in some ways you're really being yourself more, but it's the messiest. It's the one that's most subject to drama, and it's kind of that's definitely the original one, and these other forms, I think history kind of ended up developing them to sort of protect people from the consequences of the first kind, because like people can die, it like it's so there's this kind of lurid quality to that one, this inherent tragedy, and then as far as I am not a big believer in the idea of non-hierarchical formations, mostly because under some definition, perhaps those things work, at least temporarily, especially uh, especially as an antidote to scenarios where really strict hierarchies are in place to a pathological degree. But when there's an explicitly non-hierarchical scenario, what invariably happens is that the informal hierarchies that sort of liberal society is designed to neutralize end up forming. And again, that can be really wonderful and beautiful, but then also really dangerous. And so things like cults, I guess, are examples of ways that it goes wrong isn't exactly the right term, but just ways those end up generating pain, or not being very permanent. And so I think I would say before heaven, in this mortal fallen world, um, the kind of hierarchy that divine hierarchy, which I described, was sort of true interlocking of the unconsciouses. Um, it has to be kind of on the margins. Uh, it's the true vine, and so it's not inside of the world. Those other three are in the world. In this version, where it's like really like pure self-realization interlocking with pure self-realization in a way that is kind of mutually amplifying. It's rare, it's probably temporary, and uh, and it's not possible to scale. It's not possible to scale into like the social bond. Um, the way that these others, uh, they do potentially all have that ability. Um, like at least at some kind of theoretical limit, they do. It would probably be tragic for any one of them to actually achieve that. But so we can imagine that on the other side of the wall in heaven, that would be, again, it would be a right, basically. Like human beings would have the right to hierarchy, um, and the right to be kind of put in contact with the resources that that are most useful to them, whether those resources are other people to whom they are also a resource, or whether uh, in the whether like dead matter is a part of it too, or just non-subjective resources, like information or power or whatever, space, uh, technology. Um, so and that's not something that, it's not something that's really possible now, but it's sort of something to savor as possible, sort of through a glass darkly in this way now, but possible more literally perhaps in a future eon.